Welcome to the Pocket. I'm your host, Scooter, and here for you guys today, I'm going to predict the NFC and AFC Championship games. Now, we're also going to talk about all four potential Super Bowl matchups and who I would think is going to win in those situations. But other than that, we're going to dive deep into the present narratives, the Vegas predictions, injuries, and all that sort of stuff to really figure out who we think is going to win these games. Of course, it's going to be my take. So without further ado, let's get right into it. And we're going to start things off with the Commanders at the Eagles. At this point, I feel like seeding really doesn't mean that much at all. Both of these teams have won two playoff games already. The Eagles have home field advantage, but obviously both these teams are great. To start things off, we're going to talk about the present narratives. I know the Commanders are a huge surprise, but we're going to talk about the Eagles first. Their narratives are they have the best roster in football. Saquon Barkley, the offensive line, the receiving core, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Jahan Dotson, Johnny Wilson, and all those guys as depth pieces. Jalen Hurts at quarterback, who hasn't been spectacular, but we know when we're talking about a roster, quarterback isn't really, it's kind of its own category. And then for the defensive side, they have the number one defense in football that's also extremely young, and they've gotten better as the year has gone along under Fangio's coaching. So they have the best roster in football, and what that also gives them is the most elite run game in the NFL, I would say. Now, you could debate whether or not this is, say, the Bills or the Eagles, but I would go with the Eagles personally because their offensive line is far better than the Bills' offensive line is. And although Josh Allen is definitely a better runner than Jalen Hurts is, Saquon Barkley is way better than anyone the Bills have at running back. I know James Cook has had a great season. Ray Davis, promising rookie, and Ty Johnson's been getting some receiving work and been effective. But, the holes that they're able to open up with this offensive line and then eliminating one defender, using read option or RPOs and whatnot. It's just been ridiculous. Saquon Barkley, 2,000 rushing yards. We already know how good he is. We've seen him this year in the right situation, how great he has been. They have the most elite run game in the NFL. But a sort of negative narrative surrounding the Eagles, really the only negative narrative, is that their passing game has been off for a couple weeks now. Jalen Hurts suffered a concussion against the Commanders actually last time they played, and also a left finger injury, I believe. But it's the concussion that I'm gonna really hone in on here because even though he did take lots of time to rest, he didn't play the following week. That game was in week 16, and then they rested in week 18, right? So he missed week 17 after being injured in week 16 and rested week 18. Now he did play the past two wild card games, so it's like he is healthy on paper, but what we've seen in these games has not been encouraging from Jalen Hurts specifically. The rest of the team, the coaching and everything has been phenomenal. Obviously, they've won both games, but if we're just going to look at his stat lines from both of these games against the Packers, 13 for 21, 131 yards and two touchdowns. Honestly, that's really not too bad. I understand that he's really low on the yards, but he did have two passing touchdowns. One was 11 yards and one was probably also more like that. When you look at the sacks allowed, the Eagles allowed two sacks in this game, but there were a lot of messy reps for Jalen Hurts in the pocket, for lack of a better phrase. He would get under pressure and then he would panic and throw the ball, and maybe it was even to the right guy, but he'd miss the throw. I believe he got like stripped for a fumble where they recovered it, but he wasn't really looking too good under the pressure, and also 2 for 11 on third down, right? So like I mentioned, it wasn't so much that he got sacked so much, but only two of the 11 third downs were converted. Now they were 1 for 1 on fourth down, probably like a half yard push. So I'm looking at this passing game and I'm saying, well, you had 131 yards. Sure, you were leading the whole time, but you would just like to see them perform a little better when you have guys like A.J. Brown, Smitty, Dallas Goedert. You have the run game to open it up. I just, I don't understand why it's not there. And then when you go and you look at the Rams game, although I would say, they did put up more points. This was pretty much all Saquon Barkley. I mean, he had 128 passing yards on 15 completions. Saquon had 200 rushing yards, okay, and two touchdowns. Now Hurts did have the one rushing touchdown, and that was like a 40-yard rushing touchdown. So he did sort of make up for it, but once again, that is opened up by the offensive line and Saquon Barkley. The only decision he had to make there was whether or not he was going to pull it or not, and that's pretty elementary for an NFL quarterback. So once again, not super impressive stat line. And then third down again, 6 for 15, and sacks allowed 7. They really dialed up the pressure. They were very aggressive blitzing him, just like the Packers were. And the Commanders would be wise to do the same thing. So that's the negative narrative, and that's really the only one. Other than that, despite this, they've been able to win 2 playoff games against 2 great playoff teams, the Packers and Rams. Moving on to the Commanders' narratives. Their first narrative, and this is a little less quantifiable, if that's the right word, they're way better than we thought they were. They are way better than we thought they were in the preseason. They're better than we thought they were halfway through the season. I was hesitating to even put them in playoff contending tiers for quite a while. And they're even better than we thought they were after the Bucs game. Every week, they're better than we thought they were, because then they proceeded to go and put a beating on the 1 seed Lions. So even at this point where they're exposed and everyone knows they're better than we all thought, they still have the element of surprise because they can still get better going into this game, right? And this Commanders team has only been a thing this year. This is a brand new head coach, rookie quarterback, a bunch of new players and veterans in there. There's not as much film on them. This Eagles team, this foundation has been here for years. We've seen them going all the way back to that year they made it to the Super Bowl. And even before that, before they had A.J. Brown or anything like that, this team has operated very similarly for a long time. So it should be easier for the Commanders to predict the different types of things that the Eagles will do than vice versa, than for the Eagles to predict the things the Commanders will do. And then the last narrative for the Commanders is that they have a much better and more clutch quarterback. Now, you could really debate me on this. You can say Jalen Hurts has been to a Super Bowl and he's proven more. He's been in a league long. I don't care. Personally, what I've seen from Jaden Daniels as a rookie and the supporting cast that he had compared to Hurts and how long Hurts had, well, he made it to the Super Bowl pretty quick, to be fair, and he did make the playoffs right away. But I wouldn't say he was working with much worse than what Jaden Daniels is working with. And he's already here. He's one win away from going to the Super Bowl. So I'm going to confidently say he's a better guy than Jalen. Now, there's not really a negative narrative here, but the negative thing is that this is all like uncertainty, really. I mean, Jaden Daniels could go out and lay a complete stinker, and then we could start questioning, okay, is he really a top 5 guy? He definitely had the best rookie season of all time, but is he as good as we were thinking after the Lions game? And then they're better than we all thought. They could just be hot right now and, on a hot streak, winning a couple good games in impressive fashion. Eventually, you might run out of gas, and then that's when we're like, okay, you were better than we thought, but, eventually we ended up being right in that you weren't quite the best, right? So those are the narratives on this game. Let's talk about what Vegas thinks now. So considering all these narratives, put them all together, Vegas thinks Philly -6 and a 47.5 point over under. So that would project an Eagles win of, I'm going to round up because they're both 0.75, 27-21. I think that's, on surface level, it's a pretty reasonable projection. The Commanders are overachieving. The Eagles have been here before, and they're the best. Even though the Lions got the 1 seed, I think at the time of the playoffs, the Eagles were sort of the best looking team in the NFC. Hurts did have that concussion and finger injury, and they don't look great because of that. But everything other than that, they've been fully healthy, completely unlike the Lions. So I understand where they're coming from with this take. But at the end of this segment, I will give you guys my take. All right. So let's talk about injuries now. We've talked about, the narratives heading into this game, but something that people always forget to check before these playoff games is injuries, right? Because these opposing coaches are going to attack these injuries as best they can because they know it gives them the best chance to win, right? Attack the weakest link of the chain. Now the Commanders, starting off with them. Last week, Sam Cosmi, their guard, who's been great this year, torn ACL, out for the year, and that is brutal. Absolutely brutal. And now they have 3 guys who are on rest, so I'll talk about them last. But Deron Payne, if you don't know him, he's a defensive tackle. With a knee and a finger, he's questionable. He didn't participate in practice. And Bobby Wagner, with an ankle injury, did not participate. questionable. Now, Dante Fowler Jr., Clellan Ferrell, and Zach Ertz are all, they got different things, but it's tagged with rest. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that these grown men who are questionable and are also taking like a half rest day are going to play, right? So really who we're worried about here is Sam Cosmi, Daron Payne, and Bobby Wagner. Okay, if they don't have Bobby Wagner, that's going to be a real problem because he could be, the veteran middle linebacker who's also not the same athlete he used to be, but quite athletic, could be the key to them containing Saquon Barkley. I don't know if he was healthy when they played the Eagles the first or second time, but I'm going to assume he was. But after a third time seeing them, with a couple coaching adjustments, having him is going to be key to executing those. Now, moving on to the Eagles, they really only have two did not participates. All the rest seems like it's just rests. For them, Dallas Goedert did not participate with an ankle injury, so he's questionable. And then their center, Cam Jurgens, with a back. He's been pretty good. I mean, he's not the best center in the league, but center is a very important position on the offensive line. Calling out the blitzes and kind of leading them, the rest of the unit. So having a backup in there could be very problematic, especially when you consider, I believe Allen is still healthy. If him and Payne are out there and, this whole defensive line is healthy, then that could be an issue for them. Like I mentioned, they have a bunch of dudes who have rested, right? And it says what their injury is that they're resting, but they're going to play. All right. So let's talk about the team stat trends, okay? I've laid out so far the narratives, the injuries, and the Vegas take. So this is where we're going to start diving into more of what I think and what I think sticks out to me. I'm going to start off by talking about the Eagles. Saquon Barkley has been unstoppable. Despite the struggles the Eagles have had in the passing game, Saquon Barkley's 200 yards and 2 touchdowns versus the Rams were too much, and they came at just the right time to shut the door. The Rams were, kind of climbing back and whatnot, but it was too little too late. So this sort of reminds me of what the 49ers were when they acquired Christian McCaffrey. And I remember when they acquired McCaffrey, I thought, oh my God, they're going to the Super Bowl. And, I'm sure I wasn't the only one thinking it, but look at what happened. They did. Because to get through the NFC, you don't need an elite quarterback. You can get there with Brock Purdy. You just need like the best team in your conference. And you know what? That's what the Eagles have right now. They have the best roster. Okay. And now they have the cherry on top, the elite running back. So are they like the new 49ers? Well, I wouldn't go quite that far. Why? Because Kyle Shanahan, the head coach of the 49ers, is another reason that he's the engine to that machine, okay? And the Eagles have Kellen Moore and Fangio now, but I'm gonna go ahead and give the edge to Kyle Shanahan because in the end of the day, Sirianni's the head coach, and the 49ers assistant coaches, I'm sure, are just as great as Fangio and Kellen Moore. So I don't think they're quite the 49ers because I'm not sure they have. Well, honestly, the 49ers have choked in the playoffs too. And that's what the Eagles I have hated on them for. But I'm just going to go ahead and say I think, Jalen's a little bit better of a runner, but I don't think he's as good of a, improvising and processing quarterback as Brock Purdy was. Okay. So not quite the 49ers, but it's very similar. Very similar. Okay. And now the Commanders, their team stat trends. Oh, and also for the Eagles, yeah, their defense has been great. Okay. I'll give them credit for that. But for the Commanders, very interesting for them. As they made it to the playoffs, they played the Bucs in the first round. And a big reason they won was it was a very close game and they were losing 17-13 in the fourth quarter with like 10 minutes left. And the Buccaneers fumbled on their side of the field. The Commanders went and scored 20-17. Both teams kicked field goals, and that was the end of the game. 23-20. Now, that was just the first turnover, and that was the key to their victory, right? Obviously, we know these NFC teams are all very close, and they all play very close to each other. This Bucs team beat the Eagles, okay? So it looked like they were going to win this one, but they didn't. They lost the turnover battle. In the next game versus the Lions, it got even better for the Commanders. 5 turnovers forced against the Lions. And so that makes 6 forced turnovers in the playoffs so far. Now, some of those were on like trick plays with wide receivers throwing passes and, a fumbled snap exchange. But at the end of the day, this defense is being opportunistic. And you know why that's helping them out so much, helping them, achieve these upsets? Because they have 0 turnovers throughout the playoffs. So when I mention teams playing against the Eagles, I always mention turnovers and why that's so important. So just remember that as I come to a close with this point. Now, one more thing, the Commanders were very aggressive on 4th down in both of these games. Against the Lions, they went 3 for 4 on 4th down, and against the Bucs, they went 3 for 5. This is like Madden to them. They just keep going for it. But you know what? When you get it more than half of the time, it's worth it because you're keeping the ball away from them anyway. And even if you just kick a field goal, if you shoot an extra 3 minutes off the clock, if you're around tied or like having the lead, then that's beneficial. So back to what I was saying about teams playing against the Eagles, I always say it. You can't turn the ball over. You can't get completely dominated in time of possession. And that's like step one. Then after that, you have to execute your assignments against one of the most athletic run games we've ever seen, right? So you got to go do all that right. But it starts with the turnovers, the penalties, and being aggressive to hold on to the ball. And I started realizing, looking at this Commanders team and the 2 games they've played, it's almost like they're practicing for the Eagles. They went for it aggressively on 4th down. That's to make sure that they can maintain possession of the ball. They've played clean football. You want to do that anyway, but you have to do that to beat the Eagles, right? And they haven't turned the ball over. Like I said, they haven't turned the ball over themselves, and they have forced turnovers out of the other teams that they're playing. I guess the Buccaneers one wasn't really forced, but they got it, okay? This Eagles team has held on to the ball. They got lucky in the Rams game, recovering the fumbles that they had. In the Packers game, it was like the same thing, where that kickoff, I'm standing on business when I'm saying I'm pretty sure the Packers recovered that, but it was just things like that where they're getting fortunate with the turnovers. Well, the Commanders have been getting fortunate with turnovers. So the Eagles better hope that their luck continues because the Commanders have made a living off of winning games like this. Now, who's better on paper? This is going to be quick. Eagles are way better on paper. It's not even close. Now, if you want to weigh a quarterback very heavily and say Jaden Daniels is way better than Jalen Hurts and it's way closer than I'm making it out to be, you're more than free to do that. But the Commanders lost Sam Cosmi. The Eagles offensive line is so good, and that's the most important unit on the team. Their defense is elite, way better than the Commanders' defense. The only advantage I would really say they have is Jaden Daniels, which is kind of crazy to say, but and maybe Dan Quinn at head coach, but I don't know, man. Just other than that, I just don't see on paper any way that the Commanders are better besides Jaden Daniels. So I guess I will combine these last 2 segments. What narratives do I predict will come to fruition? And what is my prediction? So I do think the narratives that will come to fruition will be Saquon will be unstoppable in this game. He will have that crazy game where he goes 150, 1 or 2 touchdowns, maybe tack on an extra 50 in the receiving game with like 4 receptions. They're going to use him like McCaffrey to try to win this game because they know they're going to have to. But I do think if the Commanders, they're going to have to force a couple negative plays inevitably, I think the Eagles and Jalen will struggle on 3rd and long. Now, we've seen this in the first 2 playoff games that they've played against the Rams defense that isn't all that great, and the Packers defense, which is pretty good, but still not all that amazing. Now, both those teams held the Eagles to between 20 and 28 points, 22 and 28. So I think it's fair to expect something, somewhere around that range, somewhere around that 26 to 28 range for them to score points. But it's about when you score them, right? And it's about, do you have the lead, right? Or are you coming from behind? So the Commanders are going to continue to go for it on 4th down. Like I said, it's almost like they've been preparing for this game to keep the ball away from the Eagles so that if they do have a negative play or they do miss a 3rd down conversion, it hurts just that little bit extra more. And you might be listening to what I'm saying and you're like, he's not really going to do it, is it? Is he? Yes, I am. I'm predicting the Commanders to win this game 24-23. So the Eagles defense will show up and they will contain Jaden Daniels to an extent, but the Eagles are going to have one or two turnovers, one or two sacks, a penalty. There's going to be a collection of those things, maybe count them 4 or 5 of them that get him this game that haven't gotten him in the last 2 games. And the Commanders are going to take that and double it by going and chewing up 5 minutes of clock, going for it on 4th down, not turning the ball over themselves, right? Like I said, extending those drives to chew up the clock and score a touchdown, right? We don't want field goals. So that's sort of what I'm predicting for this game. I think this spread is crazy. I've said this before about the Eagles, and I got proven so horribly wrong. So I am being a bit bold here, but I think the spread should be a bit more like Eagles -2.5. I still think this is an upset, what I'm saying here, but I'm projecting. But this Eagles team has been trending slightly downwards just a little bit for me the last 2 weeks. The Saquon Barkley and the whole team is very impressive, but there's just something off about the passing game that I really don't like. It's so important in these really close playoff games that you can improvise and extend on 3rd down. And as great as Saquon in the run game is, if Jalen Hurts and the Eagles fail to do that 1 or 2 times, that could be the difference in this game because the Commanders can go chew up 3/4 of a quarter of football, right? So I have some notes just to make sure I didn't miss anything. I'm going to just read through them for you guys. Even then, yeah, like I said, I'm favoring the Eagles, but even then, I'm taking the Commanders. I said in the very beginning of the playoffs, I think this team could do anything. Something just tells me we have no idea what we're dealing with here with this Commanders team, right? Now, that, like I said, they're going to have to pull off some 4th down conversions. And avoiding negative plays for them is going to be key to doing that. So that means if you're going to get sacked, chuck it into the dirt, get that incompletion, right? If you're running the ball and you're thinking about bouncing it outside or going up the middle, go up the middle, right? Both ground games are going to be going. Saquon, right? Jaden Daniels and Brian Robinson and Eckler and all them. So whichever team is able to create more explosive passing plays, with Terry McLaurin or A.J. Brown, is going to be another key in this game. And I'm just more confident that Jaden Daniels is going to be able to do that with Terry and Diami Brown than Jalen is going to be able to with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. Okay, so if the Eagles play a clean game, they will win. But if Washington can force 5 turnovers out of the Lions, I think they can force 1 or 2 out of the Eagles. All right? So that's that. That's my NFC Championship prediction. Washington Commanders rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels gets to the Super Bowl, and he's going to take on the winner of this game. That being Bills at Chiefs, the 2 seed versus the 1 seed. So I talked about a bit more of the bold, kind of surprising conference championship game, but this is a conference championship game we've seen before and one that many people probably predicted before the season started, even though the Bills were actually kind of down after losing Diggs and the Ravens were up, gaining Henry. There were still probably some believers out there. But, a couple weeks into the season, I think we all could see this as the most likely outcome. So present narratives. This is where the narratives get really fun. We're in the AFC now. None of this is just like brand new and like refreshing every year. We know these players for years. So starting off with the Chiefs, their narratives are, well, they own the Bills and they own the AFC. They make the AFC Championship every year. And the one time he lost was to Brady and the other time was to Mahomes, who he beat the second time around. So he owns the AFC, and Josh Allen's never beaten him in the playoffs. And now the other narrative for the Chiefs is sort of similar, but a little bit different. And that's that they just happen to use devil magic to win all their games. They only had 2 losses this regular season, but really it was only 1 loss. And that was actually to the Bills. But, the other loss was they were resting their starters. But every other game, they managed to score less than 30 points, but just hold the other team to just a few less points than they score, which is, obviously that's the name of the game. But it's really much harder to do that if it's like they're trying to, right? It seems like they're throttling because they're doing just enough to win because they want to save as much as they can for the playoffs. That's what it literally seems like. But it goes far beyond this, right? It goes far beyond them making the clutch plays. People talk about the referees, right? The roughing the passers, the pass interferences, as that also being part of their devil magic. Random things happening like blocked field goals, extra points, and picks. I'm sure a safety has occurred somewhere in there. Punt return touchdowns and things of that nature. They use their devil magic. If something can go wrong for you when you're playing the Chiefs, it will go wrong because they use devil magic. Okay, now on to the Bills. Their narrative is, as I mentioned before, they are the only team to legitimately beat the Chiefs this year. And it wasn't like some one score victory where they sort of just by probability managed to be the team that ended up beating them. No, they won 31-20. Now they had a 2-point lead before they were in the Chiefs territory, but they had a 2-point lead and it became fourth down. And they were like 20 something yards away. And a lot of people would say, oh, kick the field goal. You go up by more than a field goal and they have to score to win. Well, the Bills have been here before and they know how that goes. Is when you give Mahomes the ball back with a chance to win, he's going to go do it, even in 13 seconds. So the Bills elected to go for it and use their elite quarterback against the Chiefs. And you know what? It worked because Patrick Mahomes isn't on the field when Josh Allen is. And this is what teams, the Commanders, like I said, they're figuring this out. Keep your offense on the field. Go for it and be aggressive, especially in these games. The Bills did it. Josh Allen took it all the way for 6, and I've been referencing this play all year because it just keeps coming back to me. As this was indicative of something, okay? And if you've watched any of my other predictions, you'll know probably where I'm going with all this. The Vegas take favors the Chiefs, Kansas City -1.5, and an over-under of 48.5. That projects a Chiefs win of 25-23.5. Not too bad, I guess. I mean, it seems like it's going to be a lower scoring game. We know both teams like to sort of play slow and consistent on offense, but they're also, home to two of the best quarterbacks in the league. So, yeah, I guess that prediction makes sense. It's pretty similar to what most of the Chiefs and Bills matchups have been over the years. A few years ago was a bit higher scoring because the defenses weren't as good and the offenses were way better. But hey, I understand this projection. Let's move on to injuries. For the Bills, they've got some bad news. The Chiefs are mostly healthy. They're pretty much completely healthy. But the Bills, they've got a couple concerns, a couple questionables, okay? Safety Taylor Rapp, hip, did not practice. I believe that was yesterday. Christian Benford, the corner, remains in concussion protocol and will not practice. Key progress. And then linebacker Matt Milano, he's just been back. Will be limited at practice with hamstring soreness. Oh, man, I really hope they have him because he's going to be key with Travis Kelce, and so is Taylor. All these guys are going to be key. If they miss all three of these guys, they're losing this game. Just more than likely. They got to be having at least two of these guys, I think, to survive these injuries. So these are something I would monitor very closely if you're looking to place a bet. Wait until these guys' statuses are announced. This game is happening on Sunday. I believe both of them are. Yes, they both always happen on Sunday. So for the most part, both teams are healthy, but the Bills have a couple questionable players on defense that if they're not in there, Mahomes and Andy Reid, that's the side of the ball they go at, and it's not going to go well for them. I'm telling you right now. Let's move on to the team stats and trends is what I mean by that. The Bills' defense has gotten much better. We saw them play the Ravens again. They got destroyed the first time around, and this time they looked much better. But large in part to their defense improving has been, guys like Milano coming back and things like that, but also their run game improving every week. I mentioned how they have a three-headed monster, so to speak, when comparing to Saquon. They have James Cook, who's like this explosive receiving back. They got Ray Davis. I think he goes by like the muscle hamster, like Doug Martin. And then, so he's like a red zone guy. And then you got Ty Johnson, who's been involved in third down situations and the receiving game. And he's actually made some explosive plays for them too. Now, their ability to rotate through these running backs, use Josh Allen in the run game, and chew up the clock has been, probably the largest reason that their defense has improved, winning time of possession and things like that. So that's what I noticed from the Bills throughout the playoffs and the closing weeks of the regular season. Now, the Chiefs, for them, it's that they're outside of whoever they've lost for the year, Rashee Rice. I guess Pacheco, they kind of lost him for the year and he's back, but he's not really the same guy. And it seems to me that as long as Juwan Taylor just stays healthy, that they're going to be good. He was injured earlier in the year with the knee. And I believe that they're going to be able to manage around 24 points on offense. I think they can do that. This Bills defense is not the greatest historically versus the Chiefs, but I think the Bills being able to hold the ball away from them, time of possession, is going to act as their defense, sort of like the Eagles did in the Super Bowl, except this time, no offense to Jalen Hurts. I like Jalen Hurts as a person, right? But comparing him to Josh Allen, when the run game gets swallowed up and Steve Spagnuolo dares you to pass, right? Josh Allen's going to be able to do that, whereas Jalen Hurts, he made a lot of big plays, but there were just a couple that he wasn't able to make that ended up costing them. So that's the team stat trends that I've been noticing, throughout the playoffs so far and, the closing weeks of the regular season. Let's talk about who's better on paper now. I'm actually going to say the Chiefs are better on paper. They got a better defense. They got a better offensive line. They have worse weapons, I would say, than the Bills do. And the quarterback's pretty close and comparable. They also have better coaches. Okay, so on paper they're better. But what I would say is I think that Mahomes and the weapons he's been working with this year, I feel like it's really been catching up to him. It was really only Travis Kelce, and Travis Kelce made he made a couple plays, but it was that one long touchdown that really was like the only explosive play they had in offense. So although I feel like the Chiefs are better on paper, I kind of want to say the Bills just because I feel like their team, their identity is a lot more cohesive right now, whereas I feel like the Chiefs isn't. But I feel like you can kind of go either way with this one. So now we're going to move on to my prediction and the narratives that I predict will come to fruition. So I really do think the Bills are different this year. You can kind of tell by the way I was talking about who's better on paper. But these defensive injuries could kill them, right? That this could kill everything that's been built up for them. If they really play, their best game, I don't think the Chiefs will be able to stop them on offense. Okay. And that means situationally too, right? So the way I view this going down, Bills jump out to an early lead and they keep the ball away from Mahomes, right? They go into halftime having a 2-score lead with the time of possession being somewhere around like 18-12 or 20-10. And so, yeah, they go into the second half with that lead, and then, the Chiefs make their second half adjustments and all that good stuff, and they start coming back and scoring. Now, this is where it starts looking very similar to that Chiefs-Eagles Super Bowl, right? And I know this isn't the Super Bowl, but you know what I mean, where the Chiefs are starting to come back, and it's starting to look like, oh, they're not going to stop. Well, it's going to be that same situation where the Chiefs offense is going to figure it out. Once they figure it out, they got you. They're going to score every drive. But here's going to be the difference. The Bills are going to be able to keep the ball away from the Chiefs. And that's the only way you can stop that from happening once they get going. Just like they won the last game, it's either going to be tied. They could even be down 3, but they're going to have the ball last, and they won't make that same mistake twice. They're going to chew up as much clock as they possibly can. They're going to tie it or they're going to take the lead, and then they're going to win the game. So the Vegas projection was 25 to 23.5. My projection is Bills win 26 to 25. So everything I said is now landing in here. I said I think the Chiefs will score at least 24 points. I have them scoring 25 here. The Vegas projection for the Chiefs is 25 points. I have them scoring 25 points. Ever since the wild card game, I've had them scoring 25 points. And I have the Bills scoring just one more point, 26. So that's even close to the projection of 23. So I guess the question is, are the Bills going to get that game-winning field goal or not? So there you have it. That is my AFC Championship prediction. I listed my NFC Championship prediction in the beginning. Now I'll talk about the Super Bowl and what that would be in this case. And this hasn't been projected yet by me. I didn't think the Commanders would make it this far. And now I have them going to the Super Bowl. Oh my God. Who would have seen this coming? A team I had going like 5-12 in the preseason. Now I'm projecting them to go to the Super Bowl. So Bills Commanders. If this happens, I will dive more into it. But for now, we know both teams are going to be aggressive and go for it. And we know both teams like to run the ball, but they can be explosive. I would say more so the Commanders. And even though they are going to be sort of keeping the ball away from each other, I think this is going to be like a game of Madden where both teams just can't stop each other from scoring. And yeah, they're doing long drives, but they're scoring on every single one of them. So I would have the Bills winning in this case. Once again, I'm standing by my predicted Super Bowl winner. And I would have them winning this game 38-35 in an absolutely exhilarating shootout. A game that I wouldn't miss for the life of me. Now let's talk about the other three potential Super Bowl matchups. Bills-Eagles. We've actually seen this game last year and very, similar looking teams. And it was a game that went to overtime. It was spectacular. The Eagles came out on top. And it really could have gone either way. It was high scoring. Like I said, it went to overtime. It was an amazing game. But I think in this one, it wouldn't be quite as high scoring. Both teams are doing the exact same thing. But the big difference is even though the Eagles have a better offensive line, a better running back, a better defense, and, the coaching, I would say, is about equal, maybe a slight edge to the Bills, the Josh Allen factor. I'm giving a lot of credit here. And I will also take the Bills to win 28-26. So nobody's beating the Bills, according to me. And then if the Chiefs get in, nobody's beating them either. It's sort of the same thing, except instead of like the dominance of the run game and Josh Allen, it's more of just like, the dominance and experience of Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. As much as I would love to see Jaden Daniels pull off an upset, I'm taking the Chiefs to win that one 28-27. I do think Jaden Daniels would play close and maybe even catch the Chiefs off guard a little bit, but eventually Spags would figure him out. Andy Reid would figure him out, and they would go on to win that game. Chiefs-Eagles. Wow, this would be pretty awesome to see a rematch, except if you're me, a Giants fan, who begrudgingly rooted for the Chiefs in that matchup, but actually it ended up being super joyous because they ended up winning. And if you know, you know. But I think this time it would be a lot lower scoring. The Chiefs' offense isn't as good as it was then, and neither is the Eagles. But they both, or the Eagles are running the ball a lot more, so there would be a lot of time of possession playing here in situational football. But I would take the Chiefs to win this one, much lower scoring than last time, 24-23. And if you are a perceptive and observant football fan, you will notice I have picked only AFC teams to win the Super Bowl out of this situation. Now, I could be wrong, but I've held this stance for many, many years. And I may even feel strongest about this out of all the narratives that exist. The AFC is way better than the NFC, and nobody ever remembers this until the Super Bowl is over, until the Super Bowl has happened. Unless Jaden Daniels wins the Super Bowl this year, I'm not convinced any team in the NFC can really compete as they stand right now with all the injuries and stuff. And even, you got to assume that's going to happen to some of these teams, that they're going to get injuries and stuff. They can't compete with whoever rises to the top out of Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, and Lamar every year. They just can't do it. And I'm going to go even further to illustrate this point to you, that if you're going to win the Super Bowl as an NFC team, you have to be a fully healthy super team. The past 2 years, we know the Chiefs beat the super team San Francisco 49ers. They beat the super team Philadelphia Eagles. But the 2 years in between that, who were the two NFC teams that won? They beat the Bengals. Well, that was the Rams. They were a super team, and they have a Hall of Fame quarterback. And that team they played was a second-year quarterback, Joe Burrow, who obviously is incredible, right? And they're a great team to this day, but they only won by 3 points. It was very close. The best team in the NFC, barely beating a team. And you could argue, would they have even beaten the Chiefs? It's a good question. And then the Buccaneers, well, he's that elite, the best quarterback of all time, came from the AFC to the NFC. So is that really an NFC dub? It's also a super team, okay? things went perfectly for them. It was the COVID year. And then you go to the year before that. That was the year the Chiefs finally made it to the Super Bowl. They beat the 49ers, another super team, 31-20. And then before that, it was Patriots Rams. So before the era of Patrick Mahomes. So in this era of Patrick Mahomes, unless if you have a Hall of Fame quarterback, which as of right now, I don't see Jalen Hurts as a Hall of Fame quarterback. And as much as Jaden Daniels looks like he could be, I'm just not going to say that right now. And I don't think they have a super team either, that being the Commanders. So both teams are missing something out of the NFC that they would need to win the Super Bowl. Whereas in the AFC, this Bills team, they haven't been to the Super Bowl before, but, I would say playing playoff games against Patrick Mahomes is pretty comparable, okay? Obviously, there's a bunch of different factors like the extra week and the media and frenzy and all that stuff, but you understand what I'm saying. This Commanders team has never been here, and obviously they look great and they look ready for it. And like I said in my wild card predictions, this is good almost that they have never been here before. They haven't been disappointed. There's no negative thoughts in their heads. They haven't been spoiled or corrupted by sadness, right? They're just riding high right now, and that's what's keeping them going. But the Eagles, it's mostly a Jalen Hurts thing for me with them. I have more confidence in them to actually win the Super Bowl because they're less matchup dependent than the Commanders are. But yeah, I'm just standing by it. Unless if Jaden Daniels does something absolutely incredible, I don't really see the Eagles or Commanders winning the Super Bowl. But hey, I could end up being wrong. The Eagles, if Jalen Hurts can, win this game and figure things out over the 2 weeks and look fresh and prime and ready for the Super Bowl, then yeah, I think they can win it. They're fully healthy. They got everything they need. They just need Jalen to be on the money and get the passing game going again. Now for the AFC, like I said, it's really just whoever gets in out of this game, I think they're winning the Super Bowl. Okay, so if the Chiefs win, yeah, I'm taking them. If the Bills win, yeah, I'm taking them. And that's pretty much all I got to say. All right, that's your NFC Championship prediction, AFC Championship prediction, Super Bowl prediction, and every possible Super Bowl prediction. All right, so if you did make it this far, please leave a like on the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you want to see more. Catch my Super Bowl, prediction videos that will be coming out. My reaction to the conference championship games after they happen, and don't forget, if you think I'm an idiot for picking the Commanders to win, go tell me in the comments. If you think the Chiefs' devil magic is going to be too much for the Bills, tell me in the comments how so. And other than that, I'll see you guys on Monday after the conference championship games. Thank you all so much again for watching, and I'll see you then. Peace out.